what it is that I'm talking about, some of the things that I'm talking about, what makes it real. If you have questions about the distinctions that I'm talking about forgiveness, about being responsible and creating your own life, about getting to know yourself so that you can have the space and create the space to allow others to be exactly the way they are and exactly the way they are not. So let's just dive into that a little bit. You see, most people don't really understand what is meant by forgiving. And forgiving really is accurately spoken, meaning that for means before or in advance of. To forgive means to give in advance. To forgive, true forgiveness means that you have given up something in advance before any wrongdoing ever happened. So it literally means to give up your right to resent, to make others wrong, to use a wrongdoing to hold against someone in order to diminish them or to control them or to isolate them or to keep yourself separate from them. So to forgive means to give up in advance. That's what the word forgive means. To give up what? To give up your right to be resentful, to make them wrong, to dominate them. And so what I'm going to talk with you about today, and I have a caller on the line, so we'll continue that, but I prefer to forgive somebody in that way, to say, okay, it was all right to do it this time, but don't ever do it again. That's just hypocritical. Because if somebody has done something, it's more likely that they will pretty much do that again anyhow. So that's kind of stupid. But the hypocritical part is you have never owned for yourself that there is a part of you that is just like that could have possibly done that same thing to another. So let's talk about owning. Oh, the person was on the line, they hung up. So if you were one of the people that were on the line, go ahead and call back and I'll take your call. But it's life just doesn't work that way. All right? I want to talk to you about making space to the extent that it's more like self-forgiving or self-acceptance. And by self-acceptance, I mean that you forgive yourself for something. You see, we've all done things that we feel badly about. We've all done things that we are holding on to that we hope nobody ever finds out about, or that if they have found out about it, we're holding on to things that maybe we haven't forgiven ourselves for. And then somebody else comes along and does something just like that, or that reminds you of that, or that is very close to that, and it triggers that place in yourself where there is no space. What I'll say is no space. It's closed off, like you don't want anyone to go there, you don't want to go there. It's something you don't want to see or feel or know about yourself. That's why I said earlier in the show that without self-examination, without knowing yourself, it's impossible to forgive someone else. And when you do know yourself, and you can be responsible for your life, then you find that there's really nothing to forgive. You find that those things that others apparently did to you were a reflection of something in yourself that was unresolved. In fact, you might even begin to see that it was a gift that they gave you. Now, if you don't get the gift, then you can't be grateful for it. But you need to be able to create the space for that thing to exist. Because whatever you resist, whatever you're resisting about yourself, never mind anybody else, but whatever you're resisting about yourself, whatever you fail to make space for, and by making space, I mean allowing for this thing in yourself. Maybe you have anger. Maybe you've done something dishonest. Maybe you have cheated at something, or maybe you have any number of things, okay? You know what I mean. Each one of us have done something that we're kind of ashamed of, and we don't want anyone to know about it, and we don't even want to think about it about ourselves. In other words, we cannot own it. By own it, I mean like, yep, I did that. I did that. I'm ashamed of it. I don't like it, but I did that, okay? And it's not who I want to be. It's not how I want to be. It doesn't live up to my own standards about how I think a human being should be, and therefore, I'm not going to do that anymore. Simply put, I'm done with that. That hurts. It hurts others. It hurts me. I'm ashamed of it. I'm not going to do it anymore. That would be coming close to at least recognizing and getting to know something about yourself. You could go deeper than that. You could go, why did I do that? What was motivating me to do that? Oh, I wanted, blah, blah, blah. So whatever it was that you needed to own about yourself, you began to own that, and then by making space and completing it, by that I mean you could allow for, okay, that's how I was then, and this is how I am now, okay? Now, you and I both know that we've done things that we are ashamed of, we would rather people not know about, and we maybe have hurt other people, or we've hurt ourselves, and we may have even done really disgusting things that if we saw it in another human being, we'd be shocked, right? And yet we've done it ourselves, or we're capable of doing that ourselves. So, if you could own it, owning it means I could see how somebody could do that, because I could do that. I could see how somebody else could be that way, because maybe in the past I've been that way, or maybe there's some part of me that is that way now. And if I'm ever going to become a whole and complete person, a total human being, then the truth of the matter is a whole and complete human being has some dark side and some light side. It has some pretty stuff and it has some ugly stuff. That's what it is to be human. To be human is to have some things that are not so pretty. To be an extraordinary human being, to be a human being that has the capacity to be responsible for their life, includes the capacity and the ability to see those ugly little things about ourselves that most people would rather hide, and go, yep, I've been that way, I've done that, and I can see how somebody else could be that way. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying creating space for, or self-forgiveness. Because whatever you resist will persist. That's pretty much a law in the universe. Whatever you resist will persist. You can write that one down. If you're resisting something, you're keeping it there. When you let it go, it disappears. Things in and of themselves only have persistence in time as a result of resistance. Memories, bad feelings, bad thoughts, if you resist those, they just continue to be there. If you just allow and make space for them, then it's like, okay, let that go. The Chinese have a saying about a fire in a house with the windows closed creates a lot of smoke. I don't think they're talking about a fire that burns a house down, but I'm talking about a fire that people cook on. If you open the windows, the smoke can't stay in the house. So it's like that with negative feelings, negative thoughts, things that you've done that you're ashamed of. If you can open the windows, create space, in other words, and allow them, they will naturally disperse of their own because they have no substance other than your resistance. So if you're really resisting something and you fail to make space for it, it will manifest. It will come back. It'll manifest in you, and one of the ways, the most common way that things manifest, is that you will have people show up in your life who will do those things to you. so that you can feel what it feels like to have that done. Now that's very common. That's very common. That people will do something, they'll hold on to it, they'll hide it, they'll never want to face that about themselves, that they were that way or that they'd done that thing, and then somebody will come along and do something similar or exactly the same thing to them, and then they can't forgive that person. The reason they can't forgive that person is because they haven't owned that in themselves. They haven't made space for that in themselves. And once you do that, and that's part of the work that we do at Embrace Growth, that's what the embrace part is about. When you begin to embrace your own humanity, embrace your own flawed imperfections, then you begin to immediately have a great deal of compassion and love for other human beings. And love is allowing someone to be the way they are, not trying to manipulate them or cajole them or dominate them or try to get them to behave or be in some other way. Allowing people to be the way they are. That's what love is. You're not trying to control people, trying to manipulate people, trying to dominate people or avoid being dominated by people is just dishonest and hypocritical, and will never end up leaving you with a feeling of love. It'll leave you with a feeling of resisting, and whatever you resist will persist. When you can allow somebody to be the way they are, it doesn't mean you have to like everything. You didn't hear me say you have to like them. You don't have to like everything about somebody, but if you can allow them to be the way they are, even if you don't like it, then you have begun to own something about yourself. Like maybe there's some ways that you can be that you don't like, and you can allow that to be there. Just allow it to be there. Doesn't mean you have to keep practicing those same behaviors that don't work. You just allow to be that, I have some flaws in my characters. I have some things in my character that after a half a century I'm still working on, okay? I've been working on most of my life, and some of these things I've mastered, and some of the things that I consider myself to be on a path to master certain aspects of life. Some of them are more challenging than others. Okay? And so I'm certain that if that's true for me, it must be true for you, that you have certain aspects of your personality that you'd perhaps rather overcome or outgrow or transform or have be another way. And if you resist them, those are going to stay, I promise you. And if you can give space to them and begin to own it and know yourself and forgive yourself for being that way, like, yeah, that's the way I am, and I'm working on it, right? Then you'll have a lot more compassion, love, and forgiveness in your life. You'll find it easy to forgive other people because there's nothing to forgive, and you'll just have a lot more space in your life. Today, I'm speaking about forgiveness. And forgiveness is always self-forgiveness. Forgiveness is always for the forgiver, not the person being forgiven. The person being forgiven more than likely has gone on about their business and their life is going just fine. But the person who needs to forgive, the person who is holding on to something, the person who is resenting something, the person who is resisting forgiving, is the person who's doing all the suffering. And I can promise you that there is an entire array of toxic chemicals and emotions and peptides going on in your nervous system which age you quickly. Resistance is very much like, imagine having your foot on the accelerator of your car and on the brake at the same time. Your car may move forward, but it's going to wear out quickly. Okay, the brakes will wear out, the car will wear out, the engine will wear out. That car will be used up very quickly. And so it is in our lives and in our bodies. You are not just a physical body. You are a spiritual being who has a physical body. You are clothed in a physical body. You are having a physical emotional, psychological, and spiritual experience. That's what we're calling life. And what you call life is actually a simultaneous connection of overlapping dimensions, and you experience it in a very matter-of-fact way. So any person that may have apparently done wrong to you is simply having that same type of experience as well. And when you are holding on and resisting, when you are resenting, which is, from the French word ressentir, the French has the same word for smell and feel. To feel again or to smell again, the word scent, sentir, to ressentir, to resent something is to feel it again, to smell it again, if you will. And so if you are resenting something, you are holding on to, resisting, and keeping something close to you that if you were able to release it, it would simply disperse of its own accord. Things, events, memories, feelings, thoughts, conversations, they only persist out of resistance. They only persist because you keep them around. You keep talking about them. You keep thinking about them. You keep feeling them over and over and over. You actually have internal dialogues where you speak to yourself about these things that you resent. Then you go tell other people about it. You may even write things down and do all kinds of other things to make sure that this thing that you are resisting, this wrongdoing, stays around. There are people who are rape survivors, who are incest survivors, who are survivors of all forms of wrongdoing. Okay? Now, personally, I've never met a single human being in my entire life, and I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of human beings who hasn't had somebody do something bad to them. If you're alive and you're a human being, somebody's done something bad around you, to others around you, and to each other in your presence or not. But people do bad things. Okay? And I've never met a person, another human being, who hasn't done some of those bad things themselves. So this kind of gives you, hopefully, some insight into the nature of human beings. Human beings are wonderful, they're great, and they do bad things. And they have bad things done to them. Now, you can go around and resist that all you want. You have a right to. You have a right. Nobody can take it away from you. You have a right to live your life resisting all the wrongdoing in the world. You can resist it and resist it and resist it and resist it some more. Okay? And you can resist it all you want. And you can resist it until you die of old age or cancer or mental illness or whatever else is eating you up inside, because that's what will happen. Resistance causes physical manifestation. If you resist something enough, it will begin to manifest in you. And sometimes it'll manifest on you, right? Literally, it'll be something that'll happen on your skin or in your body. Or if it's something that you really, really, really don't want to see and you don't want to face, it's like so buried deep, then it'll happen in your internal organs so that you can't see it with the eyes. How many times have you seen somebody, they look apparently just fine, they look fine, and but something is eating them up inside and something is actually killing them from the inside out. So resistance causes persistence, and persistence causes decay. It causes breakdown, and it also, because we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, we are psychological and mental and emotional beings, we are sending out thought forms, waves of energy that are measurable, and the universe, meaning other people, things, and energetic occurrences in the world and universe around us, are attracted to things like themselves. So if you are sending out negative, resistant, resentful energy, then more of those things will come to you. That's how they begin to manifest. You actually become a magnet for the very things that you are attempting to resist. So this show is about forgiveness. It's about love. And, it occurs to me that there's no real, true love possible in your life or anyone's life, not as an experience. We talk about love, we theorize about love, we sing about love, we read poetry about love. When we see love in the movies or hear it in a song or in a poem, it brings tears to our eyes, so momentarily we feel that love. So it's, I call that the feeling of love, okay? That's just the feeling of love. But to actual experience of love on an ongoing basis, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of what's going on in the world, regardless of what bad things have happened, to experience that kind of love requires a sort of letting go. It requires a lack of resistance. That kind of love means giving up resisting, giving up your right to resist. Remember I said you have a right to resist all you want. You can resist it and resist and resist all you want. You have a right to. Nobody can take that right away from you ever. You can resist all you want. If somebody's done something bad to you, you can just go ahead and resist that and resent it and be angry and upset and hurt about it for the rest of your life. And then see how that works out for you. I assert from my own personal experience and from working with thousands of people that that's not going to go well. That's going to lead to more and more resistance, more and more pain, more and more resentfulness, more and more sadness and breakdown until the actual source of the original resentment will no longer be visible to you because it'll be covered over and over and over by years and years and years of bad experiences like the first one. Bad experiences brought on and attracted by resisting, not giving up or forgiving up the original circumstance in the first place. So, love is the experience of love is absolutely intrinsically connected to the experience of forgiving or giving up. Giving up one's resistance, giving up of one's right to resist. Because, look, you wouldn't be resisting if you weren't getting something out of it. You get something out of it. People get a payoff by resenting. Some people have based their entire identity on it. Okay? Some people have based their careers on it. There are people that have had bad things done to them and they've made it a cause in their life to make sure that that bad thing gets eliminated from the human experience, and so they've they've got it on their business card or they've got it on their website, that they're against something, right? They've taken a stand to resist something, and so sometimes that can even be your entire source of income, is your stance of resisting something. And I'm here to tell you that the experience of love begins with self-forgiving, self-accepting, and it's an essential part of having complete relationships. This is a show about relationships. It's a show about love. The whole purpose of Embrace Growth and the Honor, Integrity, and Mastery workshops and the Women-Only workshops, the whole purpose behind that is to have people give up their resistance to life itself, give up their anger, and literally forgive all of the wrongdoings that's ever happened in their life. Now, forgiving does not mean it's all right to have done that. It's not permission to do it again, and it doesn't even mean that what happened was acceptable. It means that you give up your right to make it wrong. You begin to own that, yes, human beings are capable of such things. I'm capable of such things. I could see how, if I had that person's background or parents, or if I grew up in the town they grew up in, or if I had the same background as them, I could see how perhaps I might have done something like that myself. It may be as small of a consideration as that, having the willingness to be responsible for that. Maybe there's some part of you that is like that too. And when you can have the courage and the insight and the compassion to really begin to own even all of those little ugly things about yourself and your life and your character, then you begin to own what it's like to be a human being. And when you can begin to own what it's like totally accept what it's like to be a human being, without any shame or any guilt, any hanging on or resisting, but just simply, I can get how people could be like that. Then you begin to get connected to all of humanity. And you begin to be a place where love and forgiveness and spaciousness can begin to occur. Now, here's the thing about being a spiritual being having a physical experience. Thoughts have power. Thoughts have literally measurable, an electrical impulse that is measurable. And the interesting thing that has come to light in our modern science world is that each and every cell in your body, and I don't know, there's billions of them, like there's as many cells in your body as there are stars, okay? Billions and billions of cells, the surface of them are covered with a receptor that responds immediately to every thought. You have a thought, whether it's good or bad, whether it's love or hate, whether it's anger or forgiveness, and immediately every cell in your body is aware of it and is responding to it. Every cell in your body is responding to the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions going on right now, and they always have been, and they keep doing that. Okay? So when you begin to self-examine and you begin to own and have space in your life about the things that you've been feeling guilty about or ashamed of, it makes space. In other words, there's literally an expansion that happens psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and literally physically on a cellular, molecular level. Yep. On a cellular and molecular level, neurologically, you begin to expand. Now consider this. Everything in nature is constantly in a state of either expansion or contraction. It's either being born and growing and becoming more full, or it's diminishing and cycling back to a disintegrated state. So when you become integrated, thus the word integrity simply means to be integrated. Okay? Integrity is about being integrated with life, the flow of life. And when you can become integrated with the flow of life, you begin to expand psychologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically into life, embracing life. Then you find there's nothing to forgive. There's just some things that are actually happening. Some of them you like, and some of them you don't. Some of them you're afraid of, and some of them you are thrilled about. Okay? And if you can expand into life and begin accepting life the way it is on its own terms, and accepting yourself the way you are on your own terms, it doesn't mean that there may not be things to work on in your life. You may have parts of your character that are really terrible and that you need to work on them. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you have parts of your character that simply don't work. You know, maybe you have anger issues, or maybe you have a tendency to be dishonest about things, or maybe you're very, very shy, and then that makes you angry inside. Maybe there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things in people's characters that maybe they need to work on. Maybe you have a big ego, and you go around bragging about things, and maybe you need to work on that. Because even that is a matter of self-acceptance. People who are arrogant and have a big ego, go around bragging about themselves all the time, are usually people that don't really have a very high opinion of themselves. Those type of people find it very hard to forgive. People who have a low self-esteem or low opinion of themselves usually find it hard to forgive, and usually have a tendency to try to make themselves appear more confident, more sure of themselves than they actually are. And so, to those people, I would suggest really just looking to see what it is that is happening with you that you might need to forgive. What is it that is something that maybe you're ashamed of, or you feel guilty about, or that, and listen, it may not be anything that you've said. Sometimes parents control their children using guilt, which please don't do that. Religions do that, schools do that, parents do that. We've all learned to do that, usually from outside sources. They make you feel bad about yourself in order to control you. How many people come along and say, look, you're great, you're a beautiful, awesome, perfect being, and you made a mistake. Don't do that because this is why that doesn't work. Instead, they tell you, you should be ashamed of yourself, blah, 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 right? In other words, they diminish you, hold you down, and use shame, self-doubt, take away your confidence, so that you feel unsure about your own personal decisions, your own personal intelligence, your own personal ability to expand into life and trust yourself. And it makes you, as a child, most of us by the time you're 7 years old, they've made you dependent. Now, the truth of the matter is, just as an aside, as a child you are dependent on your parents, yes? You can't feed yourself, you can't do a lot of things. So, you're not up to the task of surviving without a parent or an older person, an adult, to help you direct and protect you and so forth, your life. So, to make you become codependent on them would not be the best way to have you become independent later. Parents, I hope that what you want for your children more than anything, I hope that your goal for your children is that they become independent, prosperous, self-directing, free-thinking, creative, spontaneous, joyous, loving, self-forgiving human beings. Because you know what? That's how we came here. You came as that, and it usually gets beat out of you, or trained out of you, or conditioned out of you by parents, schools, relatives, religions. By the time you're 7 or 8 years old, it's pretty much already over for you. And mostly you've learned how to survive inside of certain conditions. And those conditions are, for the most part, I'm not saying that every household is like this, but for the most part, those conditions are limiting your behavior by having you feel guilty, ashamed, or afraid. Guilty, ashamed, or afraid to be fully self-expressed. So people go into life, and by the time they're, teenagers or adolescents, they're already guilty, ashamed, and afraid. They're afraid of their sexuality, they're afraid of their intelligence, they're afraid of their parents, they feel guilty about some of the things that are going on in their minds and their thoughts and their bodies. Instead of saying, wow, this is really great, they start to feel ashamed about that, whatever that is, all those sexual feelings that start to happen around adolescence. You're taught that that's shameful and you shouldn't feel that. Nothing could be further from the truth. And so, rather than creating a world in which people are fully self-expressed and they have the courage to find out what really works and doesn't work, we have a world of codependent relationships in which people are afraid to forgive. They're afraid to truly, truly love. They're afraid to truly, truly express themselves, like wholeheartedly, like truly express their love. And so we are all sort of withholding from each other and hoping for the best. And then the model that we get given is very often a model of codependency in which we feel that we are incomplete, and we are because, why? Because we haven't ever gotten to know ourselves. No one has ever said, go think about who you are. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to help you with seeing that about yourself, and I'll tell you the truth without any guilt or shame or loss of power, and really come to know yourself. And nobody's ever taught you that. Nobody's ever given you those instructions. Nobody's ever given you that permission as a child or as an adolescent or even as an adult to actually begin to own who you are and accept and embrace that. So consequently, we have learned to become manipulative, to never quite tell the truth about ourselves, never quite see the truth about ourselves or others. If you can't see the truth about yourself, you can't see the truth about anybody else. You only see your version of what you think you see, rather than see actually what's truly there, because you can, once you truly own who you are, your vision opens up. Once you begin to get to know who you really are, with all the ugly stuff and the beautiful stuff about yourself, then your heart begins to open up, and rather than just see through the eyes, you begin to see through the heart. And your whole body becomes a resonator, if you will. And you begin, and I know that people watching this show, I know that if you're hearing my voice, then you've had the experience of knowing the truth on what we call a gut level. Like I just knew in my heart or my stomach, I just knew the truth about something. Sort of a vision or a premonition about things, or when somebody's not telling the truth, or when something's going to work out in a particular way. But we have, for the most part, been trained to ignore those feelings and to not give them any credit. We've been trained to only pay attention to what's written in books or what somebody else has taught us. And so we have grown distant from our own inner voice. And very often that inner voice that we hear, if I say inner voice, it's saying a lot of negative things to us. If I say your inner voice, most of you hear like, well, it's not your best friend. It's saying you're so stupid, or you're such a failure, or grow up, or get smart, or whatever it's saying to you. It's usually not saying something nice to you. It's usually not encouraging you and expressing love through you. This interior voice that we have developed has become a very critical voice. And so part of experiencing love, like fully experiencing love and compassion and forgiveness, has to do with being able to really stop and listen to that voice, not the critical one, but the real one, the one that is, you can tell the difference, because the voice that I'm speaking of, the inner voice that I'm speaking of, is a peaceful voice, and it speaks in whispers and will often just guide you without any words. You'll somehow know certain things, and sometimes you know it with your whole body, or sometimes you just know it in your heart. You say, I know it in my heart. And so if you get quiet and listen, you will begin to know the truth about some things in your life, and you will begin to have the space that I was speaking of earlier, the space to create letting go, stop, ceasing the resistance, and allowing others to be exactly the way they are, and to stop trying to manipulate the outcome or the behavior of other human beings by just simply allowing them to be the way they are. And when you can do that, then you begin to experience life in a whole new way.